Hey everyone, since we're nearly 1 week away from the release of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, I think it's the best time to finally discuss the final roster of new and returning monsters that we will be seeing in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Now for a few clarifications before we begin. We're going to be treating this as speculation and not confirmation, even though we have a lot of solid evidence to make these claims. Essentially, the demo has been out for a while, and let's just say that people have been looking through it. And in it, some information has been found, but not all, since of course, it's not the final code of the game. So that leaves us to treat this as suggestive and not final. So I'll go a step beyond that and just call it speculation on my part. With this list is just basically most likely going to be there, but a name or two could be added. Additionally, reviews of Sunbreak are nearly set to drop, which means that review codes have been already sent out and we can expect a complete confirmation of this lineup sooner rather than later. Hell, it could actually happen before this video goes live. Once the embargo lifts, however, we should expect to see someone post the full lineup. And remember, the embargo will lift before the actual release. So what we can surmise is that you'll see an additional monster or two being named to this specific list that we will be going over. And of course, I also want to hear your guys' feedbacks in the comments if you're excited for this lineup, a little bit disappointed, expected more, or does it actually really matter since Gore is back and that's all that matters. So with all that table setting out of the way, let's get started. So what we can quote-unquote speculate is that 17 monsters will be making up the roster for base Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Now originally that doesn't necessarily sound like a lot to begin with, but I think when you start to take in the whole picture, it's not really going to matter all that much since it's going to end up matching what Monster Hunter World Iceborne ended up doing. And realistically speaking, that seems to be what Capcom is chasing, essentially to match Iceborne in every step. Now for now, we can also speculate that 6 monsters will be making up the first 2 title updates. But remember, we only know of 4 title updates that are going to set to release before the end of this year and 1 in 2023. We're not even sure, and we certainly have no indications and no signifiers as to what monsters are going to be added in the update number 3 and update number 4. I think it's too early to even begin suggesting that, and until we actually see free title update number 1 with some information in it, we have really no base to actually speculate what could possibly be added there. So we're not even going to count those 2 updates in this exact video because we just simply have no way to know. But when it comes to the day 1 experience, that would be essentially what you're going to get in about a week's worth. 17 monsters is what you can expect on top of the 46 monsters that are available in Monster Hunter Rise. All of them of course come with their master rank equivalents and of course armors, weapons, etc. And that's how most of this information was put together. Now when it comes to the actual new monsters being added into the game, I think this is really going to be a sticking point and something that people are going to be a little bit too upset with, but I think there's a reason for that. So first and foremost, of course, we'll have Malzeno, Garangom, and Lunagaron, and that's it. Based on what we have seen so far, we can expect and perhaps, again, suggest that the final boss will be a new monster being added in, but for now, we just don't necessarily have a name, element, or even type. There has been some suggestions that in that one clip where we actually get to see the Santis Bahari, actually I'm going to try to put that clip up on screen right now, where you actually see the Santis Bahari discussing something with the main hunter, of course you as the player, and people have suggested that this might be a teaser for the final boss. I can't necessarily confirm that, but there's been a lot of suggestions as to this might actually be leading to the hunter's final chase of the final boss. Now to round out the list of monsters that we know of for sure, we have 4 such species and 6 returning monsters that have been confirmed. When it comes to such species, we'll have Blood Orange Bishaten, Aurora Somnacanth, Pyrarachna Kadaki, and Magma Almudron. We're going to be adding another brand new Monster Hunter Rise subspecies in a little bit. That's also going to be part of this specific group. But essentially, we're going to have 5 subspecies of brand new monsters that appeared in Monster Hunter Rise, rounding out the section. And of course, when it comes to returning monsters, we have 6 in total, but we're going to be adding 2 more as well. So when it comes to the confirmed ones for sure, we have Daimyo Hermitar, Shogun Sinotaur, Astalos, Seregios, Espinas, and Gore. So that's the confirmed list of monsters so far. Malzeno, Garangom, Luna Garen, Blood Orange Bishitan, Aurora Somnicanth, Pyragnicadaki, Magma Almudron, Daimyo Hermitar, Shogun Senator, Astalos, Seregios, Espinas, and Gore Magala. That is 13 monsters. Now there's 4 other monsters that are going to be expected available on day 1, not including any sort of free title updates. Of course, they can actually change. There could be more of them. We haven't seen the final game, so of course that could possibly change. When we start to actually discuss what hasn't necessarily been, let's say, confirmed as of yet and could just be treated as suggestions or speculation on my part, I think Shagaru Magala is the first one that comes to mind. Not only because if you look on Twitter, Shagaru Magala, you might find something interesting there, but it's basically one of those monsters that, because Gore Magala is there, is one of those monsters that a lot of people have already basically surmised that is just going to be there on day 1. I think it's a perfect addition to the game. Of course, it's one of those monsters that a lot of people would have expected to see and wanted to see, especially with the addition of Gore Magala. If Shagaru would have been added in without just Gore, I think it would have been a little bit of an interesting thing. We would have had a Crimson Glow Valstrax situation right there, where Shagaru gets added, or maybe even a different, Gore Magala subspecies gets added, but not necessarily Gore, and that would have been a little bit upsetting to some. But knowing that, or expecting Shagaru to appear, will appease a lot of people. Now, I think the second one that is worth really discussing is the fact that Magna Malo, of course the flagship for Monster Hunter Rise, could potentially, and again suggesting, most likely will be receiving some sort of variant or subspecies. Essentially a different type, a different element, perhaps even a different fighting style version of Magna Malo. Now, I think the more interesting thing about what this variant slash subspecies is really going to present is what type of element it's going to have, what type of essential element it's going to be. Hellfire Blight is obviously what Magna Malo has, that's unique to him, but we don't necessarily expect them to make this like a snow ice monster or lightning monster or poison monster or anything like that. Presumably, it would have to have some sort of weird, perhaps addition or a tweak to something along the lines of what Malzeno has. A mixture of Hellfire and Dragonblight, I think, would be extremely unique and something that would make this monster shine and certainly stick out from all the other different, let's say, subspecies that have been revealed so far, which feel more traditional in a sense and not necessarily stand out as a very own unique experience. I think the next name that we're going to discuss, I think, is probably going to be a little bit disappointing to most people, although if you're a Rajang fan, I think you're going to be really excited to know that Furious Rajang is most likely going to be making the cut. And while at face value, I think it makes the most amount of sense, as essentially it is just a normal Rajang, which is constantly enraged at all times and can power up its arms separately. That is kind of its gimmick. It doesn't necessarily ever go not normal Super Saiyan. It just constantly is Super Saiyan the entire time. I think it's a little disappointing, to be quite honest with you guys, if that is the route that we are going to be going for, again, another new addition of a monster that has yet to be unconfirmed so far. You perhaps would have expected for there to be an actual new monster there, or again, kind of like the Magna Malo variant slash subspecies, for there to be actually something there substantive or something new there. But a Furious Rajang, for me personally, and again, perhaps I'm just speaking for myself, I would love to hear your comments on what Furious Rajang could actually bring into the roster, because I think at the end of the day, Rajang already kind of fulfills that Invader promise. I would have much expected or loved to see Devil Joe or something along those lines added in instead of just another version of a Rajang. But again, if that is the route that we are going to be going, then, it is what it is. But, again, I would have hoped a little bit something better than that. And of course, the last monster worth mentioning is the final boss. Now, there's been a lot of posts suggesting that this is going to be some sort of slime type monster, some type of water monster or something along those lines. I'm not really going to get into that because I can't necessarily confirm any of that whatsoever. I don't necessarily know. But one of the takeaways that I had from that video that I recently put out, where I was discussing what would you guys want there to be actually the final boss of the game, a lot of people just said they want something new. They're expecting something new because traditionally every Monster Hunter game, every new iteration of Monster Hunter has had a new final monster being added in, and not a returning monster. They would like to see more returning monsters, obviously more than the ones that we have mentioned so far, but not necessarily as the final monster of the game. So, you know, in that regard, I can certainly understand people hoping for more, but, you know, we just don't necessarily have any details of that. It's not like when it came to Monster Hunter Rise, where we kind of knew Ibushi, Narwa, and of course Allmother Narwa was completely named long before the game actually came out. We had all those details. Right now, that's not seems to be the case. Again, that will most likely change within the next few days, but for right now, as of where we stand right now, that's just not simply the case. So that's actually the full roster of what we're looking at on day one. And again, I think it's going to be a little bit disappointing to most people to know that we kind of know already the bulk of the really exciting reveals so far. I'll go over that list once again. Malzeno, Garangolm, Luna Garen, Blood Orange Bishitan, Aurora Somnicanth, Pyrak Nikdaki, Magma Armadron, Daimyo Hermitor, Shogun Senator, Astalos, Seragios, Espinas, Gormagala, Shagaru Magala, Furious Rajang, Magna Malus subspecies, which is yet unnamed, and of course the final boss, which is also unnamed. That's just 17 monsters in total, added to the base of Monster Hunter Rise's 46. Now in a separate video, I am going to try to tackle the post-launch title updates, essentially what the free DLC monster is going to be added in. Again, we can speculate on DLC 1 and DLC 2, but anything beyond 3 and 4 is just non-existent because the information just simply isn't available for right now. Obviously, that will most likely change as we head forward into the future. But for right now, we simply don't have a full picture, therefore I don't feel too comfortable of making a video on that specific subject. But again, I certainly want to hear your guys' takes on this specific lineup. Does it excite you to just have 17 new monsters in Rise Sunbreak? Does it really matter at the end of the day, since all the changes Sunbreak is seeing are really interesting quality of life improvements and stuff like that? I certainly want to make a video on the more recent wave of quality of life improvements we have seen revealed for the game as well. Does all of that kind of make up for the fact that the roster seems a little light at the very least on day one? Or again, ultimately, does that really matter? I certainly want to hear your guys' opinions on that specific topic. But that's about all the information, or rather speculation, that I wanted to go over in this specific video. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.